Hey, folks, and welcome back to EUSN, where we are covering the 2022 Star Wars Expanded Universe.com video games March Madness tournaments. Folks, I'm your host, Dylan. Unfortunately, our normal host, Matt, couldn't be in right now as he's actually, this is terrible. I got news from this morning. He's actually in the hospital with night terrors from just imagining all the ways that his Mets are going to disappoint him even in a lockout season. So hopefully one day, maybe he will pick a baseball team that actually has a training staff that knows the Heimlich maneuver. But if,
Magic.
but I'm here with Brian, our co-host, also of Twin Sons Foundation, who is our official sponsor of this tournament. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How about yourself?
Pretty good.
Good.
And then I also have Matt. I almost said Matt. Ryan of also of Twin Sons Foundation and Son of Luke. Ryan, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
All right, cool. So, starting off in the mid rim, we have a well, this one I don't think any of us agrees is going to be anywhere close, and a heavy favorite to win it all in Battlefront 2 up against Star Wars Droids from 1988. Is there any shot, or is this going to be a clean sweep for Battlefront 2? Do you guys think?
Battlefront 2 should really not even struggle at all on this one. If it even sees many votes against it, that bodes ill for its chances later into the tournament. That said, Droids should be proud to be on this top list of video games making our tournament this year.
I can say with almost 100% certainty that Battlefront 2 is going to win.
Yeah, just a really tough matchup for droids. But again, with all these 15, 16 seeds, even though they're kind of lopsided victories, they did beat out 10 other games to make it into this tournament. So they at least have that going for them. Next up in the 8-9 matchup is a battle of the Clone Wars in the original Star Wars The Clone Wars video game from 2002, this being the vehicle combat game, up against Lego Star Wars 3 The Clone Wars. Folks, do you think, again, another Lego Star Wars game and another Clone Wars game, but probably the least popular of all the Lego Star Wars games, going up against the original Clone Wars video game from 2002? Do you think this is an interesting matchup? Do you think that there might be even an upset here? Of course, in this case, the Clone Wars would be the upset over Lego Star Wars: The Clone Wars. How do you see this matchup playing out?
I actually do see an upset here, as the Clone Wars was a very popular game at the time. It actually has some history in our prior tournaments in previous years where its main vehicle, I cannot recall exactly the designation of it, the tank that you play as through most of the game, was a
Mhm.
very popular pick throughout that tournament. And if those voters show up again this year, I see Lego Star Wars The Clone Wars being in a very tough battle for this.
I think it is going to be a tough battle. You have the Clone Wars up against the Clone Wars. And I think the TCW plus Lego Star Wars recognition does give Lego Star Wars 3 a slight edge over the original Clone Wars, as fun of a game that may have been.
Mhm. But I also think the Clone Wars does, the original Clone Wars does have an ace in its back pocket. That being that a very popular character from the comics, Ula Keldroma, does make a small cameo in that game. So maybe that might turn the tide against the Clone Wars and Lego Star Wars fans. But who knows? This is definitely going to be a very interesting matchup. Folks, next in the 5-12 matchup, we have Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast against Star Wars Racer, the arcade version of Racer. Folks, do you think an arcade game from the early 2000s has any shot against another very popular game from the Jedi Knight series?
I just don't see Jedi Outcast losing this early in the tournament, even to an excellent game like Racer Arcade. Uh, it's a game that, of course, features Kyle Katarn, and it was an extremely popular release at the time. I believe it released on several different consoles, including PC, and actually has seen some re-releases fairly recently as well.
I think Jedi Outcast has us in the bag, frankly. Kyle Katarn, you have re-releases, just everything is stacked up against Racer Arcade. The only fans that would really come out and support Racer Arcade would be the ones that played it when this game was in the arcades, I would think, which is a small number compared to the fans of Jedi Knight Jedi Outcast.
Yeah, arcade games are definitely going to have an uphill battle in this tournament, folks. Next, we have a somewhat unfortunate matchup here in the 413 as Star Wars The Old Republic is up against one of its own expansions in Rise of the Hutt Cartel. Folks, do you think one of the expansions of The Old Republic, this one in particular, any of them has any shot against the main game?
Well, I think some of the expansions might have a shot against the Old Republic. This particular matchup, the Old Republic should win, hands down. I mean, obviously, the Old Republic is both of the competitors technically, but the expansion does not stand a chance here.
I would agree with that. The expansion Rise of the Hutt Cartel, though it was one of the first, um, it is just one storyline compared to all the 8 original class stories that people have fallen in love with the Old Republic and keep playing to this day. Rise of the Hutt Cartel, it is a fun story, and I do like it, but I just don't think it has enough weight compared to the original The Old Republic.
Yeah, just a really tough matchup in the seedings right there. Folks, then we have another expansion, this one being the Star Wars Empire at War Forces of Corruption expansion in the 3 seed, which is going up against another TCW title in the Clone Wars Jedi Alliance. Folks, do you think TCW has any shot in Jedi Alliance, has any shot of knocking off probably the favorite of all of the strategy games in this first round here?
I just don't see it happening. Jedi Alliance only released, I believe, on the Nintendo DS. It had a very limited audience at the time, and again, as we've previously alluded to, this was at the beginning of the Clone Wars animated show, so it did not have a very big audience at the time. Whereas Forces of Corruption is a very popular game, still active community to this day, with a very good modding scene. So I just don't see Forces of Corruption going out this early.
Nor do I, Brian. I think this is Forces of Corruption's day, ultimately. I mean, Jedi Alliance on the DS, compared to one of the biggest modding game scenes, even compared to all the video games that are out there right now. I think it's just going to be Empire at War's game. It just has too much likability, has too much playability. Players still play it.
Yeah, that is a very good point, Ryan. The modding community of Star Wars Empire at War is one of the greatest of all these competitors, so it'll definitely be interesting to see how people factor in, not just to this matchup, but all the matchups, the moddability of the games, and the modding community of these games. Um, Folks, in our 6-11 match, we have a very tough matchup here with Star Wars Bounty Hunter in the 11 seed coming up against the only Star Wars game that is actually has the same likeness as one of the movies in Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Folks, how do you see this one shaken down? Revenge of the Sith, obviously very popular fan favorite game. It's why it sort of broke the one rule that this tournament had of not being a video game tie-in of a movie, up against Bounty Hunter, one that's another fan favorite that has a lot of essential Star Wars expanded universe lore backed behind it.
Yeah, this is going to be an extremely interesting matchup. I believe the 6-11 disparity in seedings is it's going to feel a lot closer than that when the ultimate results come in. It's a hard call to make on which one's going to take this one, but I do think the seeding has the right game on top in this case, as Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith's video game adaptation was a very popular adaptation. But that said, I would not be totally shocked to see Bounty Hunter take a win here.
I will be honest here. I really can't think of a victor who has more power than the other. It's extremely close matchup. I think the closest matchup we've seen so far. And they're both great games. Whoever wins ultimately deserves that win. I don't think it's going to be a huge disparity either. It's going to be neck and neck. I think.
Yeah, very close, a very tough one there. Um, then we have in our number 7 seed against 10 seed matchup, Star Wars Rogue Squadron 2 Rogue Leader up against the original Star Wars Galaxies, the base game in Empire Divided. Folks, do you think the Galaxies community has what it takes to knock off the Rogue Squadron community, or is the popularity of Rogue Squadron going to carry the day here?
I think this is actually going to be another very close matchup in that Rogue Squadron 2 was one of the weaker of the Rogue Squadron games, whereas Galaxies has a very, very active community, still running private servers, I believe, despite the game being taken down several years ago, over a decade at this point, I believe. And I do see Galaxies taking the win on this one, actually, because it's just got the more popular game, I think.
I'm actually leaning more towards Rogue Squadron or Rogue Squadron 2. Um, I think it still has that name recognition behind it. A lot of people probably played this game back in the day. Very popular game. Maybe not the most popular of the Rogue Squadron franchise, but it still has a player base back then. Galaxies does indeed have a huge player base as well. It'd have to be, I think, up to the Galaxies fans to come out and strong to defeat Rogue Leader.
Yeah, that's a big one right there. Again, with all these game franchises, within the Star Wars genre of whose fans show up and how loyal they are to each of their franchises. So we'll have to see. And then, folks, finally in our 215 matchup, we have Super Bombad Racing coming up against the original Force Unleashed. The Super Bombad Racing, again, kind of like with our 116 matchup with Battlefront and Droids, do they have any shot at making this competitive, or is this just a glorified bye week for the Force Unleashed?
I'm inclined to believe that this will be very much like a bye week for the Force Unleashed. That said, its fans better show up to vote, otherwise the unthinkable could happen here. It is not impossible. We've seen it happen in prior tournaments where 15 seed does advance. So I think the Force Unleashed should have this one handily. It is going to be very much one-sided, unlike our prior two matchups.
I think to draw an analogy, these games would be like a matchup between Galen Merrick fighting Jar Jar Binks in a fight to the death, and I think we all know how that will turn out.
Yeah, very unfortunate for Jar Jar and Super Bombad Racing. But folks, that concludes our analysis of the mid-rim matchups. I want to again thank our sponsor, Twin Suns Foundation, which does have an active fundraiser going on right now for a brand new book drive donation, the first one in nearly 2 years. So, folks, please go over to twin-suns.net/donate to check that out, as well as the rest of the tournament as well on the expandeduniverse.com. You guys have any closing thoughts?
No, just looking forward to the vote starting on Friday, I believe.
Yep.
I look
Yeah,
forward to
vote.
seeing you all there as well. Thank you.
Yeah, votes will be starting on Friday, and we will be back tomorrow for the breakdown of the next in the bracket, this being the Inner Rim.